Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. Ava Williams, 26, trudged through the still deserted streets of the Bronx. The night was cool, almost freezing, and each breath she exhaled created a fleeting cloud of vapor in the air. Her body was protesting after a grueling double shift. Her shoulders were tense, her back stiff, and her feet, encased in her worn sneakers, felt like they were on fire, burning with fatigue and exertion. Yet, despite the physical pain and fatigue that weighed on her like a leaden weight, her heart beat with an almost naive, yet sincere, strength. Since childhood, Ava had nurtured a deep, almost instinctive vocation to heal invisible and visible wounds, to protect the weak, to repair what the world broke with such indifference. She carried this mission like a banner, a sacred fire that burned within her even in her darkest hours. That evening, as she sat on a subway bench to catch her breath, she absent-mindedly pulled out her phone to check her work schedule. The blue light from the screen illuminated her tired face, dotted with small beads of sweat. She quickly read, "Replacement, St. Andrew's Medical Center, night of the 20th to the 21st. Without really thinking, she assumed it was that night. Her foggy mind, saturated by hours of intensive care, confused the date. She got up, poured a last hot coffee from a paper cup from a vending machine, and boarded the night bus at 2:30 a.m. During the journey, her eyelids grew heavy, her thoughts fluctuating between fatigue and worry. She mentally rehearsed the actions to be performed, the care to be provided, but a kind of mental fog blurred her bearings. When the bus stopped on the Upper East Side, she got off with a slight limp, her head still foggy. She looked around. The elegant, silent streets, with their red brick buildings and streetlights casting a golden, almost unreal light. Her tired gaze met the large glass doors of St. Andrew's Medical Center. She entered, her footsteps echoing on the cold marble of the lobby. The place was almost excessively clinically clean, every surface gleaming under the pristine white lights, a stark contrast to the often chaotic atmosphere of the Bronx clinic where she usually worked. Dressed in a navy blue uniform, her name badge pinned to her chest, Ava approached the reception desk where a nurse with impeccable hair and perfect makeup was looking up from her screen with a mixture of questioning and surprise. "Are you here for?" she asked in a slightly condescending voice, as if the appearance of a young nurse from the public hospital in these luxurious surroundings was an anomaly. "Room 602. I'm covering for someone," Ava replied confidently, barely concealing her exhaustion and the discomfort rising within her. The nurse frowned, then shook her head. "Impossible. 602 is the presidential suite. Only private doctors have access to it." An icy chill ran up Ava's spine. Her heart leaped, her breathing quickened slightly. She felt an invisible weight pressing down on her chest. In front of her, on the counter, was an admissions form, and she read, almost breathless, 602, Richard Hale. The name echoed in his mind like a familiar, painful echo. She knew him. She had seen the name on an official letter she had received discreetly 6 months earlier, after, in a moment of mixed hope and despair, having initiated a DNA test with a private laboratory. She had never spoken the name aloud, but it haunted her every day and every night. Richard Hale, the founder of the HaleCare hospital chain, a billionaire known for his cold and inaccessible character, a former senator from California, a man whose name shook the corridors of power and American health. But for Ava, the name meant something else. He was the father who had abandoned her, a father she had never met, a ghost at the heart of her story. And tonight, in this hall so smooth, so foreign, destiny seemed to be knocking at his door. Ava had never known who her father really was. Since she was a little girl, she grew up with this emptiness, this mystery, this silent question hanging in the air. Her mother, Marisol, was a woman of incredible strength, a fighter born in the working-class neighborhoods, who had raised her daughter alone with fierce and unconditional love. But despite her courage, there were wounds that even time could not heal. Every time Ava asked the slightest question about her father, her mother would change the subject. Her gaze would darken, and a heavy silence would fall between them. It was an invisible wall, a secret too painful to share. Marisol carried this burden with dignity, but Ava sometimes sensed, deep in her eyes, the melancholy of a broken story. At 17, on a stormy afternoon when memories seemed to weigh more heavily than ever, Ava rummaged through an old trunk at the back of the closet. She found a dusty box, its edges worn by time. Inside, yellowed letters, a broken necklace with a fragile chain, and, engraved on a pendant, a name, Richard Hale. The letters told a story in filigree. Richard Hale had been a doctor, sent on assignment to the Bronx in the early 1990s. There was a passion, a clandestine love, but also an escape, an abandonment. Marisol had become pregnant, and as soon as the news broke, Richard had disappeared, leaving behind a heavy and cruel silence. For Ava, the name was an enigma, a mystery she'd never dared to decipher until she was an adult. 6 months earlier, driven by a mixture of hope and fear, she decided to send a DNA test to a private lab, a secret process, done in secret, hoping to get an answer, a sign. The result was relentless, 99.99% compatibility with Richard Hale. But there was no call, no words, not a trace of recognition, not a whisper of regret. Nothing. Silence again. Until this night. That night, a feeling of foreboding guided Ava through the immaculate hallways of St. Andrew's Medical Center. She slowly climbed the floors, her heart beating like a dull drum in her chest. As she left room 602, a nurse in crisp white scrubs came out, whispering with meaningful gravity. Old Hale is between life and death. Massive heart attack. He's refusing any intervention. He's asked to stay here at the hospital. He says he's waiting for someone. A silence fell between them, laden with heavy, unsaid things. Ava walked in, her throat tight, her hands trembling slightly. The man lying in bed had lost all his splendor. His face, once proud and impassive, was marked by the ravages of time and illness. His thinning gray hair showed silvery streaks in the cold light. His hands trembled on the white sheet, a sign of his extreme weakness. Yet in his tired eyes she saw an unexpected sparkle, a gaze that searched, that scrutinized, that hoped. He opened his lips weakly. Who are you? Ava took a deep breath, her voice soft but firm. I am the one you forgot. He frowned in confusion, searching his tired memory. Marisol had a daughter. A breath, a pause, then Ava answered, with quiet strength. Yes, and this girl is in front of you. I am a nurse. I have cared for people your world has scorned. I have helped patients your system has abandoned. But tonight, I am caring for you. Time seemed to stand still in the room. Then, slowly, a solitary tear rolled down Richard Hale's wrinkled cheek. The first in 20 years. During the days, then weeks that followed that night, fraught with revelations, Ava remained in room 602 as if suspended outside of time. It wasn't a professional obligation that kept her there, nor any familial obligation. It was a choice. A silent commitment, a visceral need. She wasn't coming for him. She was coming for herself. For that intimate need to close a loop that had weighed on her for too long, to stitch up the torn fabric of her history, to mend the invisible wounds that had eaten away at her since birth, to regain a dignity she thought lost. Richard Hale, deprived of his usual strength, weakened, reduced to the fragile silhouette of a sick man, gradually opened the door to a buried past. In the darkness of this hospital room, he dropped the masks, the pretenses. I ran away from you, Ava, he whispered one evening, his voice trembling but sincere. I ran away because I was afraid. Afraid of the consequences, afraid of giving up my career, afraid of losing everything I had built, but most of all afraid of what it would do to your mother. Ava looked at him, without anger or resentment. You lied too. You lied to everyone. To me, to Marisol, to yourself. He nodded tiredly, guilt etched in every wrinkle. I sacrificed my conscience on the altar of power. I closed my eyes to what truly mattered. But in front of you, none of that matters anymore. I am no longer that invincible titan. I am just an old man seeking forgiveness. A solemn silence fell. Then he added, with rare emotion, you are the only person who has looked at me without interest, without judgment. The only one who stayed when I was weak, without wanting anything from me. The room seemed to vibrate with this naked truth. Let me fix it, Ava. Give me the chance to do what should have been done long ago. 3 months later, the auditorium at St. Andrew's Medical Center was filled with reporters, spotlights, and cameras. A respectful silence reigned as Richard Hale, now in a wheelchair, slowly walked to the lectern. His face, marked but peaceful, was a living testament to the transformation he had experienced. He took a deep breath and spoke in a clear voice, carried by a moving sincerity. I built an empire believing myself invincible. I've healed thousands of bodies, but I've ignored the most important bond. The bond of blood, of family, of humanity. Today, I'd like to introduce you to my daughter, Ava Williams, a dedicated nurse and a woman of rare strength. A murmur rippled through the assembly as Ava, tall and dignified, stepped forward beside her father. She gently placed a hand on his shoulder, a reassuring presence. As of today, she becomes president of the Hale Care Foundation. She will decide on aid for local hospitals. She will embody a new form of medicine, a fair, humane medicine, close to the people. And I'm going to teach him to leave everything to her. The flashbulbs crackled. The cameras were filming this unique moment, this passing of the torch, this rebirth. Ava hadn't done it for the money. She didn't do it for the recognition. She had done it for her mother, for every abandoned child, for every injustice she had seen or experienced. But most of all, she did it for herself, to finally be free. Every year on the same date, March 21st, Ava rises before dawn. The sky is still dark, the city sleeps, the streets are quiet and cold, as if suspended between night and day. She dresses simply, a plain white coat, without insignia, not as a foundation president, not as a public figure, just as Ava, a nurse, a woman, a daughter. She walks alone to St. Andrew's Medical Center, without escort, without media, without protocol. She warns no one. Her face is discreet, and yet those who pass her sense that she carries something sacred in her silence. When she arrives at the night shift, she gently pushes open the door to the nursing station where it all began. The lighting is dim, the walls are the same, and the smell of disinfectant still hangs in the air, familiar and reassuring. The young nurses laugh softly in front of their computers, sometimes too tired to be surprised. She places a single white rose on the guard table. Always white, always wordless. She stays only a few minutes. She occasionally brushes the cold surface of the table with her fingertips, as if to still feel the pulse of the past. Then she leaves. But this time, a young nurse calls out to him, intrigued by this ritual gesture. "Excuse me, you come every year at the same time, and you always leave a white rose. Is it for someone? A patient?" Ava turns around, a soft smile in her eyes, one of those that carry the weight of years and the clarity of forgiveness. "It was a mistake." The young woman looks at her, confused. Ava explains, in a calm, almost tender voice. "A few years ago, I came here by mistake. It was 3 a.m. I had misread my schedule. I wasn't supposed to be here, but that mistake changed everything. It led me to my father, to the truth, to peace." She pauses, then adds, looking at the rose, "Because sometimes a mistake at 3 a.m. can change an entire life." The young nurse is speechless. She sees the rose differently now, no longer as a simple tribute, but as a living trace of destiny, proof that life, even in its vagaries, can offer miracles. And Ava, back straight, sets off back down the corridors, leaving behind not only a flower, but a memory, a passage, a silent lesson.